Everyone is here because you want to be here? Good. Okay. Two topics that I have presented in the literature to make this day what it was, which is, what does it mean to evolve or understand speaking as a transformational, immersive art and meditation? If you would allow me to talk about talking. I don't know many people who don't speak and speak a lot. And I don't know about you, but relationships among humans can be exceedingly narrow in what's acceptable to say and not to say. How many well-intended, intimate relationships, even marriages, can crack, fall apart based upon saying the wrong word or the right word at the wrong time, or omitting something that was thought or done, and that could be the end of whatever you thought you had. Speaking mindfully, meditatively, authentically, consciously is, to say the least, in my humble estimation, a super fine art. Those who do it and can do it well, it's not just articulation. Van Morrison, the musician, he coined the phrase, the inarticulate speech of the heart. Many people confuse elocution and articulation for the sound of words and definition. The study of language is the study of meditation. Words are energy, fair enough? They are like auditory vibration. They are auditory vibration in shared space. If in fact there were no for some miracle of sleight of mind, you lost your capacity to hear, and I was just speaking, you would be in an immeasurable grief that you lost your capacity to hear. Think of the fears that we have associated with losing our ability to speak. I don't know about you, look at the adaptations we have or the anticipations of not being understood. Probably the root cause of the so-called dysfunction is the inability of the human to understand how to hear, feel, emote, communicate the evidence of intimacy and recognition. So there's a lot to be said. There's a lot more to be felt in the world of communication. Are you with me? Again, I tend to speak slowly and enunciate because I have been the recipient of wrong words and I have been the deliverer of wrong words. I have suffered and I have made people suffer based upon my unmindfulness of speech and of listening. I in fact heard her. I heard exactly what she said, but I did not hear myself. It's another form of listening. So when I'm speaking about listening here, isn't just listening and communicating with this woman or this woman or with this woman or this gentleman or this woman. It's the ability to simultaneously hear and hear. That's a fine art. And to know where I begin and end and where you begin and end, and knowing that confluence and how to shape it poetically and intimately, mindfully evolve it to embody the Dharma, the Dhamma. Communication is another meditation to look at how we construct conflict and how we can choose to evolve freedom and beauty. So I'm pointing here to the 5 posture meditation, standing, sitting, walking, lying down, everything in between. And now we're including a 6th meditation, speaking and listening. Okay? The transformational, immersive art, the yoga and meditation of mindfully intelligent speech and listening. Okay. The preface, now a little bit more of the essence. I crave to be understood. I don't feel it as a craving, but when I'm not being felt, embraced, understood, I feel there's a degree of dissonance in the space. We fall in love based upon resonance. It may be attraction, it may be chemistry, but for me, it's the resonance sense of being seen, not visually seen, but being felt in the contours of my own authenticity, my inauthenticity, my vulnerability, my mystery. How well do we hear and listen and communicate the evidence of our intelligence when we're communicating with one another? Look at how easy it is to suggest something beautifully and it be felt as abrupt, condescending, or triggering of a pattern where you feel insulted. And in a heartbeat, good people come together and never speak again. Ships in the night. Good people who make love, who break bread, who drink wine, who do all forms of medicines. One word out of place and you're out of my life. It may not be so harsh. Okay, 2 words. Use an expletive. I don't think I signed up for that. But I'm a powerful man. I use words like that. You crossed the line, fucker. How easy it is. So, getting back to the point, what is mindful speech? I share a story with you to understand it. I mentioned the woman in Burma, Aung San Suu Kyi, Burma's state counselor, perhaps the most respected individual in all of her country. I was blessed to meet her in 95 and 96 when she was released from the first 6 years of detention. We did a book that she titled The Voice of Hope. Not her own voice, but the voice of hope, along with her colleagues. I won't even bother to talk about how she's been internationally vilified the last several years. I don't agree with it. I stand up for the beauty of my relationship with her. It's infinitely complex. I find that she's the most transparent person I've met in modern times, with her own shortcomings. It's sad to see a woman of this caliber, any person, vilified like that. But setting that aside, I asked her, Aung San Suu Kyi, you and I share the same meditation teacher, Seda U Pandita. He was the one who passed away I did the Book of Conversations with. What do you remember most about your time with him? She said, oh, I remember almost everything, she said, in her characteristic wit. I had so much time on my hands when I was under incarceration. And she said, he said, you could never be mindful enough. So everything I did, I tried to be mindful. But you could have too much wisdom and not enough balance or equanimity, and you could become impatient and short. But he said most of all was to understand the value of right speech, which I found interesting to reflect upon because I really didn't talk much for 6 years when I was alone in house arrest. He's very witty. But what he told me, paraphrasing, was that when you speak, and now I find it interesting to Nick's comment about fascism and what you do with it. Burma still today is very much a feminine-inspired, revolutionary, nonviolent, spiritual, social, political response to outmoded, toxic, masculine dictatorship, rooted in might is right, and in violence and coercion, and in indoctrination. So the weapon of choice in Burma is your voice. You don't use your fist, you don't use the gun, you don't use coercion. You're not passive, you use your freedom of voice. So to understand the instrumentation of the voice is hugely crucial because it's the action of revolution. Sayadaw U Pandita told me 5 things to remember about making speech a revolutionary, transformational, immersive practice. Do all that you can to root your speech in truthfulness. Sounds good, I'm down with it, but however, sometimes maybe. It works almost some of the time, other times. I just don't think I want to be truthful right now. I'd rather just do something other than be honest. I'm not going to be inauthentic and deceiving of you, but I'm not going to just let you know what I think. Who among us has the ability to put their mindful brush on the palette of their inner color in truthfulness? I'm going to commit myself to the meditation of truthfulness and let my stature be understood as the marrow of it is truth. Under all costs, you can trust me, Alan, to be honest. And if it's unpleasant, I'll refrain from being unpleasant. I'll be that honest with you. But it's going to be rooted in honesty. So number 1, commit yourself to the color of truthfulness. Do you know it in yourself? Self-honesty. Secondly, he said, choose the right time to say what you're going to say. You can say the right thing at the wrong time and it's ineffective. But if you say the right thing at the right time, you have more chance to be understood and get your point across. Timing. It's not just which day of the week, it's also which moment in the shared space we're in, and in the timing of what you're communicating. It's not just, this is the right time to be honest with Heidi, but there's a timing process in how quickly I say it or how slowly I say it. Mindfulness and meditation is a moment-to-moment choice-making. There were very few among us, Viktor Frankl said, but they walked through and gave their last morsel of food away. There's a lot of moments where they could have turned back. Meditation is here and now. It's not just being in the moment. Even idiots, assassins, and acrobats and athletes can do that. But to be intelligent in the moment is the specialty of discernment and timing. Okay, third, motivation. You can say the right thing at the right time and the motivation is just slightly off. You want something from him or her. You have a little bit of a coercion going on. You're a little bit of a Canggu hustler. You want to recruit people in your narrative. You want them to come to your next acro teacher training. No offense to the acro teachers, but you already offend yoga because of that. That's so brash and so ill-timed and so wrongly thought out. But I'm committed to authenticity and truthfulness. So timing, truthfulness, and words Okay, do you really want to say that? So a lot of these qualities require discernment, discretion, assessment of impact. Remember, they're using revolutionary words to confront toxic, violent, masculine, outmoded, violent dictatorship, where they often said that the more loving they spoke, the more insulting it was heard, and the more unremitting the torture was. How to confront fascism? Be fucking smart. That's what I heard. Know your speech. So truthfulness, timing, motivation. I don't know about you, but I really like good people. I like that about myself. I may not be as good as them, but I know they to be good. There's something wholesome, genuine about them. They've got a shine in their eyes. They just communicate something precious. The quality of preciousness of soul. The willingness to embody decency. The motivation of caring. When I asked Aung San Suu Kyi, what is the essence of your revolution? She said, Alan, you were out on the street with 1,000 people that gathered. They had within them the caring for a freedom larger than their own self-interests. You ask about the essence of the spiritual revolution, it's called the courage to care about things larger than your own interest. Motivation and communication means caring even for those who don't care for you. I'm not that insecure to bite your neurotic need to vilify me. Your freedom and my freedom are inseparable. Perhaps if you see this way, you may be inspired to change your way, because what I'm judging in you, I have done in my own life and could do again. Are you with me? So caring is a type of humility to know that you too could do the very thing that you're judging. If you can bear with me in this, if you can, we're getting close to the fifth point. Back in the 90s, I was invited to Yugoslavia by a woman who worked for the United Nations Refugee Resettlement Program. And I was invited to write a film of my choice by a well-known producer friend in Hollywood. And I wanted to write a film that I wanted to see, which is a good way to write books and films. And I wanted to write a book about what it meant to love in the time of war. And so my friend knew this, and she invited me to Croatia, Zagreb, where she had been based in Bosnia and Sarajevo, to make a long story short. And I spent a year there. I was relatively safe compared to the people who were under siege. But just after the Dayton Peace Accord in '95, I was in Sarajevo, and we went out to a place called Srebrenica, where, if you remember, the Dutch peacekeeping forces had kept the Bosnian Muslim men, boys and girls, in this stadium, safe from Serbian paramilitary soldiers. But when they were then under siege, they abandoned the stadium, and the Bosnian Serb paramilitary separated the boys and the men from the girls and the women. And in 2 days, they assassinated 8,000 Muslim men and boys. Not that long after that, I was out there with my friend. It's apocalyptic for the people, not for me, but tragic. There in an open field, and I don't mean to be gruesome, but to make the point about caring, the motivation in our speech and actions. There was a mass grave, one of many. UN peacekeepers were exhuming the grave to try to identify those who had been killed. I've said this story hundreds of times. It never gets old. It should never get old. It should always be new. A hand was sticking from a grave. I could see a ring on it. I thought it was a wedding ring. I could have been hallucinating everything. And I could have been me. It could have been my wife. It is my wife. It is my husband. It's my mother. That hand was immortal. That hand was my hand. That was the hand of every person that's ever been born. And I thought to myself, those motherfuckers did that? Yes? Outrage is an important response to fascism. Let us not be afraid, as Martin Luther King, to be sacredly outraged as we awaken to the atrocities of God and humankind. Be careful of meditation and Dhamma as pacification. We're revolutionary rebels, misfits, radical badasses that are willing to break the hoax of conformity and indoctrination. Go out of your comfort zone in your speech, but refuse to harm. Draw the line. He told her. Motivation is crucial. And I looked at that hand and said, you know, I could do that killing as well as be the one who killed. And right there, I dropped being a dead right enlightened Buddhist. And I ask you in your motivations, how easy it is to live in apartheid among good people, judge them, vilify them, the way they look, they don't look, who they are, the way they dance, the way they make love, the way they don't make love with me, the way that they do and don't, their religion, their background, all kinds of divisions. But for those who are revolutionary in their mindfully intelligent speech, we root it in caring. Cross the divide. Remember, in Burma, they didn't use the fist. They still don't use the fist. The military does. But Aung San Suu Kyi is a nonviolent activist who uses the power of a voice, even the power of silence. Very hard to understand that. We're not just speaking here. Timing gives a lot of pause between sentences. Motivation. Choice of words. Who can say enough about the choice of words? Meditation, the Dharma life, is the study of the energies of language, how they affect and impact us and others. You throw a stone in the pond, it has an immediate impression in the water. It ripples out to the shores. Our words, the way that we move, the way that we talk, the way that we think, for those who are sensitive, the way you look and feel can be felt like a ripple on a pond. Fair enough? We're sensitive creatures, often numbed into the conformity of a static and a noise not of our own making. Hear me out. If you feel ill-adjusted to society, consider it good news. This is not to adapt. Krishnamurti, among many great minds, have said, it's no measure of success to be adapted to a profoundly sick society. Meditation, revolutionary energy, is a disruptor. Own it. This context that we're in, pretty cool for places on the planet. It's got its corruption. Other cultures, other countries, other regions, it's a no-go zone. In America today, everyone's talking like it is in India. Fascism is in blossom. We don't know one day to the next. Snowden-like, Julian Assange-like. Who's going to be silenced? China, pretty much a fascist state now. Look at the war on Islam. Look at the war on Christianity. Look at the war on Buddhists. Look at the war on freedom of speech. Look at the war on human rights. Look at the young girl in Sweden yelling out to everyone who was nominated for the prize but didn't win it. Greta, hey, you adults, wherever you go, the house is burning in a climate emergency. What are you doing with your personal peace up in Ubud, trying to authenticate your fucking bullshit lives, man? All of you drive and fly all over the world. You're killing the future of life. You're in denial. Using your speech in revolutionary ways to confront the habit and the momentum of your own denial. What you condemn in others is often what we don't see in ourselves. You with me? Making the point really strong. Words. Choose your words. Learn to be an artist of the voice. Learn to be a finger painter of sound. But be true to yourself. Use words that are real for you and imbue them with the emotionality that's unafraid to give away our food. Make sound emotional. That's my point. Be watchful of the contortions that we all play about what spiritual should look like. One of the greatest insults to dimensionality has been the concept of stillness. That's fascism. I happen to like music, and equally I like the silence between the notes, dude. But music and sound is not silent. I like to move. My mom died last year at 96. She was in a wheelchair. She couldn't move. Let your spirituality be authenticated equally to your voice. Motivation, timing, truthfulness, choice of words. The last one. Tricky one. Normally we communicate wanting to be understood. Fair enough, it's a very human thing, right? But there are lots of instances in the world, if you're a radical or rebel, if you're part of the Extinction Rebellion activism in the world today, where it's been outlawed in England to protest the death of the future. I mean, look at that fascism. Oh, I think I'm going to be nonviolently talk about how you're going to die if I don't do this. Oh, you can't do that. Talk about Orwell alive and well. So we need people who use their energy, their voice, their mind. And the last thing here is we've got to be so watchful of an attachment to an outcome. It may not work out in the way that we intended or hope. She may not love you. No matter what you say and do and how poetic you are, she just may not be, he may not be there in the way that you want that to be. God may not listen to your prayers, but you do it because it's right. Remember the issue of no one can incarcerate us unless we give them permission to do it. So stay, Alan, so true to an unconditional willingness that flowers don't ask space to receive their fragrance. Just fucking do it. Fuck it. Be willing to just go, fuck it. And at the same time, be willing to love it. But we want not replicas of you. Give humankind an opportunity to see uniqueness. I'll end with this, open it up to questions. One of the greatest insults to the Dharma life, to meditation, to lovemaking, to human relationships is to inauthenticate the authentic. How we pretend to mold, behave according to stenciled conditions, like an unrecognized puppeteer of a puppeteering behavior that has very little to do with you being unique to the way that you look. Speak. How many people possibly in the world don't understand that articulation isn't how well you pronounce the word? I just was in New York and went to a show on Broadway. I think the name of it was Dear Ethan, and has a last name. But the young fellow that played the lead role won 10 Tony Awards last year. He plays a 16 or 17-year-old that's so nerdy. And for 3 hours, and you see him, and you go like, can't believe this fucker's doing this. 3,000 people in front of him. And he's doing it so well that he's convincing you that it's real. And he's crying, and you swear he's just acting. But no, he's tapped into something. And he's tapped into that part of you that still can't authenticate that part of you. You know what I'm saying? It was so liberating. And I said in my review of it, mandatory viewing for everyone in the world. What a review is that? I would love to have the money to take every high school, elementary school kid worldwide to see that film. And all of a sudden they break out into song between each other. It's like, and it's not as if it's harmony either. It's like the amazing complexity of beautiful, aesthetic, intimate, poetic naturalness is my point. At the end of the day, all we have is our fingerprint. No two of us will do it alike. No matter how hard you try, you could have your inspirations, but keep opening like you would a mother to your own son or your daughter. It's okay. The way that you cry is the way that you naturally need to cry. The way that you masturbate is natural to you. You don't have to do it differently. I mean, look at all the ways that we inauthenticate our lives. Meditation is the authentication of our lives. It's not the conformity to peace, happiness, and stillness is my point. So the last thing here is, if there's anything within your stature or your intelligence or your mindfulness, remember that no two of us will do mindfulness in the same way. Because there's no two of us that are the same. Yes, we all think, see, hear, taste, touch, and sleep, and bathe, but those are primordial instincts within a parameter of perception, but within that there's the infinite dimensionality of an unexplored psyche and source. We don't know who we are. So my point here is that meditation is the great adventure of exploring similarly as we would as an astronaut or an astronomer of the galaxies, not to disavow ourselves from the beauty of wonderment. It's okay to be in mystery, in complexity, and uncertainty, but what's inside of your heart that really sets a spark into a fire? And if it were dark at night, and let me be exaggerating of this, the missing thing I find with most people, I'm not saying about you, is what Martin Luther King brought, along with many other people, is have a dream. Believe in something. Believe in your worth equally to your manifestation. What do you want to bring forth in this world, humble as it may be? That you can root your integrity, your conscience, your stature, your dignity, your intelligence, and stand in solidarity to that virtue. What is your dream? And let meditation be that act of wonderment or the adventure of consciousness. You don't have to get it right. We are clueless on why we're here, what we're doing, and where we're going, except that it's a guarantee we will go extinct. It's happened 5 times before. It's going to happen 50 times in the future. The planet is going to burn out because the sun gets too hot. The sun's going to burn out because it's mortal. Our solar system will spin out of control and dissolve. The galaxy is already programmed to equally go extinct as the meta-galaxy that we're embedded in. Whoa. Okay. So it comes back to this last thing, is meditation, mindful intelligence, and authenticity. We're embarking upon what I called existential rebellion. the mystical activist in each of us, if you want to go there. Allow yourself to have a human dream, a planetary dream, a future dream, and something so far out of the box. Giorgino Bruno, you know who he was, the Italian, 15th century, 16th century astronomer, who, because he saw that the world was infinite, he brought it forth publicly in Italy, and the church felt it as decidedly wrong to be talking about an infinite world when in fact their box-shaped, dogma-defined culture and politics. For 7 years they incarcerated him, tried to get him to recant his belief, his experience of infinity, and he refused. They stripped him, they cut off his tongue, and they hung him upside down and burned him alive for his wonderment that we live in an infinite world, essentially by saying we don't know who we are. So I say that within our speech as a final note before we take another break and open up questions. One of my greatest fears is not being misunderstood, but probably just not knowing or being dumb or stupid, not having the right word. My best friend at a young age died of Alzheimer's. He was my best friend for a long time. It was terrible and breathtaking to see someone that you spent so much time with, who was an amazing DJ, a great father, great meditator, taught English at a professor level. We were monks together. So I say that to make the point. It's not to get right speech right. It's to also imbue the awkwardness of communication, because it's a precious thing that we have for only a short period of time. I really encourage you to be your beautiful, inarticulate speaker from the source, which is the heart. Not to get it right, but what's true for you. So thank you for letting me speak that way. And if there are things that you want to discuss before we take another break and close, take a moment, think about it, and we will discuss it. That's the right speech meditation. We're going to do eating meditation soon, and drinking meditation. Please, take your time.
When you're trying to communicate in that way, but the person you're communicating with is not accepting, or is not ready, or is not willing to communicate in the same way, how you behave?
Two things that come to mind, I don't mean to be glib, is you don't seem to be understanding what I'm saying. Am I reading that into that, or how are you hearing what I'm saying? Ask an intimate question and see if it confirms your belief. And then let them have an opinion, but also have the courage to say, well, I so respect that you feel that, but that's not what I intended. Maybe I didn't make myself as clear as I could be. Let me say it again. Go the extra mile. And then if the communication just doesn't fit your integrity, bye.
That's a point you can't say bye.
Bye-bye. It's your boyfriend, your husband, your wife, your child, your mom, your dad, your God, your Buddha. There's some things you got to stay with, right? Then you really stand up, discipline yourself, and learn how to adjust. And there are lots of teachings and trainings and methods and reflections on how to improve and refine your presence in complex circumstances. And so I would just put what you're thinking and feeling that made you ask that question under an intimate meditative lens, and start to document ways to refine and overcome and enhance the complexity. I'll give you an example, and excuse me if I said it yesterday, and if I did, just tell me. Another question that I asked Aung San Suu Kyi in Burma was that you seem to have a durable sense of hope, or what you call grace under pressure. Grace under unremitting, harsh pressure. And she says, well, perhaps it was my mother and my father's conditioning that led me to feel that. But I remember reading a book, she said, when I was at Oxford. I think it was when she was at Oxford, of a young Iranian girl who was born blind into a very orthodox Islamic family, in which the father, according to this book, did not want a daughter, much less a blind daughter. And according to what Aung San Suu Kyi had read in the book, I haven't read the book, she said, if I'm remembering her correctly, the father, unconsciously based upon the habits that he had conditioned, would communicate how he wished his daughter were dead. A very harsh circumstance to grow up in for anyone, much less a young child and a blind one at that. Heartbreaks. A family friend came who had deep empathy for the child, but didn't want to break or insult the tradition, and was extremely skillful not to, quote, rock the boat in the home. But she would take the girl aside at times, take her for a walk or play with her, and she would encourage the young girl in simple and consistent ways, reinforcing her self-confidence, her virtues, her language skills, even her identity of how she may perceive her own physical form that she couldn't see. As the story is told, this young girl went on to become the first graduate of Tehran University. And she wrote a book about her life, of the power of one. Someone who believes in you. Now, either you can be the recipient of that quality and or the giver. Sometimes, I don't know about you, you can be the most loving, kind, considerate person, and at times, I don't want to hear from you. You don't even say it, but it's like, but I'm going to stay steady with you. Go anywhere you want with studying the complexity and develop the art form of patience, of empathy, of fortitude, determination, of kindness, timing, and be mapping of the complexities that you, at this time in your life, say you are committed to staying close to. And really honor that commitment as virtue, rather than the outcome of being heard. There's so many people in monasteries. I'll give you an example. It's a misbelief to think that monasteries are mostly the meditation centers in Burma. It's misleading to think it's primarily monks. Meditation centers in Burma are primarily women, and primarily lay women, because they're the ones who have time. The men are very busy making their economy their identity. And most monks and nuns don't want to meditate, but lay women are the primary ones who want to be present and mindful. So the monastery where I live, 90% of the people were women. My teacher would often say the worst meditators are monks. Why? Because they read the most books, they're the most learned, and what they do is they try to communicate what they think you want to hear. So when they're meditating and they're told just simply to share their own authentic experience, they try to communicate to you what they've read in books that are things that you probably also have studied that would validate them being deeper than the things that they think about in their own direct experience. So they mimic the Buddhist texts. And so he said a lot of the teachings of monks has to come. You can't confront bamboo with a machete. You can't, it'll hit you in the face. You got to take it from the side. And so the best way to teach very learned monks is indirectly looking at someone else who's much more humble, but you're teaching him or her, but really the prime recipient is letting them overhear it. So sometimes you have a complex individual in your life. Doesn't mean that you have to constantly see them as the curriculum. You can be more skillful, the way you listen to music, the way you dance, the way you cook, the way you eat, the way you talk on the phone, who you have over. Don't give up on them, in other words, but be skillful on who you introduce them to. That make sense? You're welcome. Other questions before we take a break?
So you talk a lot about, or as far as I understand, what you're saying is like Dharma or meditation is saying what, being true to yourself and saying what you actually feel and think. So self-integrity. However, I think nowadays it's a big issue, especially in complex societies or Western societies, that you have so many choices, you don't even know what you want or what you think. But I also think, unless you commit to something, how are you going to find out if it's a yes or a no, if it's
Absolutely
to you? But after you commit, you already put on a certain perspective and you're stirred into a direction. So, I mean, not everyone has the chance to go around in the world and take the time off and distance from society. So how do you think about that?
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
What brought you to, say, Bali?
Work.
Working.
Yeah.
And what brought you to this group today?
Honestly, interest, being open,
To...
but not the topic. I mean, I didn't have an intention when I came here. I was just,
You didn't know what would happen?
I knew it would be a talk. I read the topic, but I was not seeking an answer. That's just.
But you
I
like
was
the
just-
topic title.
Yeah, so I was just open to hearing.
So you experimented.
Yeah.
And then I think that's where I go in my life. Is I wrote a book years back called Instinct for Freedom. And I found that if there was a defining quality that I listened to in me to guide me, it was that sense I want to be in integrity to this instinct or this calling that leads me towards greater freedom, authenticity, and life experience based upon how I assess freedom. Freedom to dance. I won't stay in a particular genre of music because I should. I want to go to some music where I feel this rhythm to move. I won't stay in a relationship where I feel confined. I want to move with her as a heterosexual. So that instinct for freedom is something I've honored. That's all that I would encourage anyone, is to identify what is the core energy that defines your decision-making process and live in that rhythm and give it all that you can to make your day a full moon party.
So you say experiment.
Experiment with a little bit more wildness associated with it. So that, okay, I made a big mistake. I had excessive fun this last weekend. I followed my bliss and it actually turned into extreme greed. I mean, see if you can cultivate the inner addict and see if you can do it over and over again to the point where you quit your job, you I mean, those kind of things, like, am I really living the life that I want to live?
But I think it's hard to define because sometimes you don't even know what's out there because you have never heard of it or about it.
That's a very interesting point. There are those who, those who are finding good things out there, like good music, they turn other people onto it, like a good cookie or a good friend. You probably have people in your life that when they're turned on to something, you go, whoa. But if you need a menu of things to pursue that might be interesting, I'd be happy to share things that really excite me. There's one book that I have written. I'd be happy to give you a copy of it for free. It's called A Future to Believe In. I wrote it for my daughter, who's 12 years old. She lives with her mom in Vancouver, and I said, okay, fuck it. If I don't ever get a chance to share with her what I really believe, then she has it in a book. And I wrote everything that I thought would be valuable to share in that book. Anything that you really want? Do you want to get married? Do you want to have children? Do you want to become prime minister?
But that's what I'm
Do you want to be a
saying,
nun? Do you want to write a book?
At least for me, it changes. And currently, I found like it's okay if it changes. And now I pursue something free. Then maybe I want to stay home and I want to be really integrated.
Okay,
And
I hear you. I hear you.
I think it's cyclical.
Well, if you're here November 19th, come to the retreat. You cannot escape feeling into deeper places to be able to answer that in a more fulfilling way. In the absence of knowing, I have found that meditation and just sitting and feeling your intuitive voices gives you tremendous confidence on what to do. That's the only thing that I've found. Meditation is perhaps one of the most powerful forces to access what should I be doing and when and with whom. If that's your question, I'm not sure. And I'll be happy to give you the book. Other questions? Take your time. Anything at all? What time is it?
5 o'clock.
What is it?
5.
Okay, another 15-minute break, and we'll come back for the last 45 minutes before we end. From my heart to yours, thank you. And remember, if you do have questions, this is the last time to have them, please.